watching vigilantes are least likely to kill you, intentionally or otherwise.
Don't listen what your girlfriend says. She reads those magazines that say you failed the test. You don't have what she needs. I'll slither like a viper and get you by the neck.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith. My name is Brian, and today it's time for an experiment. This will be the last you see of my face in this video until the very end. Why? Because I got inspired by checking out UltraChan and his super awesome podcast setup, but I wanted to start my own damn FGC podcast. So I've got a couple of friends of mine that are coming into the recording booth now, and I will be swinging by to give them a friendly hello. So, without further ado, we're going to be talking about, for those of you who want to know what we're talking about today, we're going to be discussing the ideal size of a roster for a fighting game at launch. So, how big do you want a roster to be at launch? 10, 20, 40, 60 characters at launch? How big do you want it? Overall opinions on guest characters, yay or nay? How do you think is the best, how do we think is the best way to overall balance a fighting game? What modes do we want to see in a fighting game besides the mandatory modes, which I'll be calling training, arcade, single fight, and online matchmaking? Pet peeves of fighting games. So what are those little things that just irk us? How would you create a perfect fighting game tutorial, which is kind of a rough thing indeed. We're going to be doing a roster creation exercise where we're going to create a 20 to 25 character roster for Mortal Kombat, for our own Mortal Kombat game, guests included. We're going to pitch a fighting game character, which I think is going to be the most fun of this whole thing, where we're going to pitch a fighter for a fighting game based off of our a series, whether it's an original or a property, and we got about 5 minutes for our pitch. So I'm going to set that up. Then we're going to close it out with our top 3 favorite fighting games, and and we'll be closing it out with our ending. So without further ado, let's get started. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Welcome.
Good.
Right on. So, would you care to explain yourselves to the audience before we get started, please?
Who should go first?
You can go first.
All right. Well, I'm Mono. I have a channel named Monopool, and I like to just put out whatever I kind of want to put out. I'm a big fan of comic books and fighting games, and I'm just very happy to be here.
I mean, Mono's been here once before when we were discussing our Injustice 3 rosters, too, so returning guest.
I wish I could have fucking been there for that. Oh, that's a good game.
Something we'll pen in for our next roster creation exercise, we think. And who are you?
Fair enough. I am Matty. I go by MilitechMatty, as in onto Cyberpunk on various social medias. I enjoy comics too. I'm a big movie buff. I like superheroes and things. Comics, yep. Fighting games. I didn't really do many fighting games, but they were always interesting to me. So I'm here.
Right on. And fun fact, I found you because I found that you were a big Bluebird fan, and I was like,
oh yeah.
like, oh shit, a Harbor Row fan. Let's go.
Let's go, boys. I love her so much.
She needs more love, and hopefully she gets an Injustice 3 because of that. But since we're getting this show on the road, we're going to start with our first talking point, which is our ideal size for a roster at a fighting game. So at launch, most fighters these days tend to get DLC, but they start from anywhere between Guilty Gear Strive starting with 15 characters to the fringe case of Smash Ultimate starting with over 70 characters. And then you kind of hit somewhere in the middle with Mortal Kombat 11 had 24 characters. I believe Street Fighter 6, that's not even out yet. Street Fighter 5 had 16 characters and so on. So I'm going to start with Mono. How big is your ideal starting roster before DLC or anything?
If I It really depends on what kind of game it is. I think for most standard fighting games, I would like to have a roster around 20 to 24. But if it's like a team-based fighter or it's like Super Smash Brothers where they reused a lot of assets, I'm fine with at least 30 or more at the starting gate.
Okay, so it's like
So
a dynamic size depending on how much of what is going on, right?
yeah, because for example, Guilty Gear Strive, that game has so much like high fidelity to it, and not only are like all the characters getting redesigned, like most of Arxis's games tend to be very high quality and focus more on the visuals, so I can understand why they would start with rosters, I guess, if that makes sense, since they have to like hand animate a lot of it.
That makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
based off of how much shit's going on at launch, it makes sense to kind of plan your character rosters accordingly.
Mhm.
And how about you, Maddie?
Yeah, so like I said in the intro, I fighting games was never my thing. I grew up on first-person shooters, but so I don't really have like a metric for an ideal launch size. But if you ask me, I'd say that it's not really the size, but the roles like filled, and do you have enough to fit everyone's play styles? So like you've got your zoning characters, and I don't know, you've got like high damage characters or whatever it is. If like something. So I never really considered a size. I think maybe 18 characters is a pretty good fit, but like I said, I'm more looking, do you have enough to fit someone's preferred, like a one-size-fits-all.
I gotcha. So for you, Maddie,
Yeah.
it's or have all of the relevant niches been filled in your
Yeah.
roster size? Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, I can totally get behind that. Makes sense because you don't want you'll want a few rush down characters, the guys that want to get in your face, and then you got the kick away characters. There's the characters that kind of try and play the midfield, your grapplers, your combo characters and such. So once you kind of fill that out,
I definitely feel that's a very important aspect to a roster, is making sure at the starting gate that you have as many different archetypes and play styles as possible,
Yeah.
so that it's diverse enough that there's a type of character for every type of player,
Yeah.
or at least almost every type of player.
and then you can get your experimentation on in DLC. Like if NetherRealm ever decides to make a proper puppet character, then that would be where they would want to experiment with that. Stick with what you know, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that about covers the first point, so we're going to move on to the next one. And I'm going to ask Maddie to start this one. Guest characters, yay or nay?
Oh, big yay. Big yay. I love it when I get to see like a character that I love so much come to life and like be playable in this game, even if it is only as like a DLC or like, not included in the main campaign. It's so good and enjoyable. And actually, it was funny you were talking about Injustice on the last episode, because Bluebird was gonna be an Injustice and she got cancelled. And I'm still mad about that to this day.
I'm still mourning the loss of Etrigan, so I'm on the
Oh
same
my god,
boat.
I would have loved to play Etrigan, and I think Constantine and Crypto the Superdog are gonna be in there too.
Yeah, and not just that, there was also like Detective Chimp, there was a giant Darkside Siege Beast, which, personal theory, that was going to be a stage where you fight on the back of a giant monster. But,
that would have been so cool.
but if Injustice had a year 2 or year 3, those characters would have absolutely gotten in.
Oh, that would have been so good. But yeah, oh man, I remember, I think this was definitely before the release of the TMNT in Injustice 2, because one of the NetherRealm developers put out like a poll, like, oh, who do you want to see? And in, like, as a guest character, and I think it was Injustice 2, and two of the options were the TMNT and Spawn, and I was like, hell yeah, let's put Spawn in, and because I love Spawn so much, and they put the TMNT in. And I was mad about that, but then they put him in MK11, and I was like, you know what? I can get behind that. That makes more sense, because Spawn is not like a family-friendly.
I think he's the opposite of family-friendly Spawn. Like if you had the poster boys of anti-family characters, it'd be like Lobo, Spawn, and friggin' Fritz the cat. Oh God, Fritz the cat.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
But yeah, big yay on guest characters. You guys remember when they put Predator in MKX?
oh, they revealed the Predator. They revealed the Predator for Mortal Kombat X on my birthday back in 2019.
Nice.
And I was
That's awesome.
big Predator nerd, so I'm at high school at the time, right? It's my graduating year, so I'm hanging out at the loading dock, which is where I would go eat my lunch, and I had my laptop at the time, so I was just going in, checking it out, seeing what was going on, because I knew a trailer was coming. Right, was coming around that time because they had announced Jason Voorhees on Friday the 13th.
Oh, I love Jason.
Right?
Oh, man.
Which perfect way to announce that. Just a little teaser. Hey, Jason's gonna be our first DLC character. Makes sense.
Nice.
And then I go in and I watched the DLC trailer, which was my first time seeing it. So my reactions literally went like this. Okay, Jason, we've seen you before. Tanya shows up. Oh man, Tanya! I kind of hope they fix her design, but so far so good. Tremor completely floored me because I did not expect Tremor of all Mortal Kombat characters to show up, but that makes me happy because I love Tremor, especially now that he was in MKX. And then when the clicks started as the Predator was uncloaking, I shrieked because the Predator is probably my favorite guest character of any fighting game property, bar none. And
yes.
And in terms
Absolutely.
of fighting game characters, like in terms of like, because some characters just don't work for certain properties, right? Like I wouldn't put Spawn in Street Fighter. It just doesn't really.
Yeah.
Like how you wouldn't put Spawn in Injustice because it doesn't match the tone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mate, you can make an argument for Spawn personally, but Hellboy was the better
Yeah.
pick. Hellboy was definitely the better pick. Absolutely.
I cannot picture him in Mortal Kombat at all. Like, I've seen people say that he could have been in it, but no, that would not have worked.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like Hellboy works better in Injustice, Spawn works better in Mortal Kombat. If they switched them around, it wouldn't have worked out quite as well, right? But at the same time, with how characters don't really work, there are some guest characters that it's just like literally a glove. And let's think about what we have in Mortal Kombat. We have spectral fire-breathing ninjas, undead demon sorcerers, literal gods, military people with cybernetic arms,
Actors.
snobby actors with green god powers, and an Aztec pseudo god who dethrones a hybrid warrior woman with scary ass teeth. If you were able to fit an interdimensional big game or an intergalactic big game hunter anywhere, Mortal Kombat is the perfect spot for that.
Oh, right, because it's like the ultimate
Absolutely.
hunting grounds. Everyone's a fighter. It's the best.
And I know my Predator lore, and I think the Yautja would be jumping at the opportunity to start ripping out NetherRealm demon spines, which is why I thought Predator was a big pick. But before I get to my slightly obvious answer for guest characters, how about you, Mono?
So it really depends, but for the most part, I am on the yay side. I do think there are times where fighting game guests aren't done as well, but I think it's a good way of bringing in new fans, potentially. Like if, for example, I found myself getting more interested in Jason Voorhees and the Predator and their franchises after they were brought into MKX. And Tekken 7, for example, I think has done guests in the most interesting way possible, where Akuma from Street Fighter was not only made a playable character, but he was a playable character within the story mode. They took a character from a completely different universe and incorporated him into the story. I think there's a lot you can do with guests. And Injustice 2, I had a very similar reaction to you with Predator, Brian, where I specifically remember waking up really early just to watch the trailer for Fighter Pack 2 for Injustice 2. Because it was at Gamescom and that was at a completely different time zone than me. And I watched it and I saw Hellboy grab the missile and light a cigarette. And you could honestly hear me say, no fucking way. Not a character, like I was expecting, I wanted him in the game, but like wanting and expecting were two different things for me. So I was just blown away by that. And he's still Injustice 2 has two of my favorite characters of all time and a few actually, but from a guest perspective, Sub-Zero and Hellboy were both in that game, and that made 17-year-old me back then incredibly happy. But I can also understand people saying nay on guests because, especially if they're DLC, that can take away spots from characters that fans have been wanting to see for a while. Like I know Mortal Kombat especially.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to MK11's guests, I do enjoy that Spawn is here, but the rest of the guests I haven't been as thrilled with. Like RoboCop and Rambo, I can't help but be like, wow, I wish we had gotten like a Smoke or a Serena instead.
Oh, Smoke would have been cool.
Yeah.
Like I can understand it. I am more for guests than against them, but there are times where I am not impressed with certain guest characters, so I can understand people who are against it.
So you'd say 60-40 in favor of guests for you then, Mono?
Yeah, pretty much.
That makes sense. Personally, I'm big yay for guests, but it's like 75-25 for me because MK11 burned me pretty hard with the guests, if I got to be honest. I mean, the Terminator, he was supposed to be a Mortal Kombat X, but got dropped, so okay. So he's in the game, that's fine, whatever. When the Joker was announced, though,
I hated that. I hated that.
I have a very complicated history with the Joker. Batman the Animated Series and Arkham Joker, to me, are the definitive Jokers.
Oh, same. Hard same.
And the big problem with the Joker is that he, especially recently, keeps being made out to be just a terrorist in clown makeup, when the whole point of the Joker is that he finds crime funny. Sure, in the very first renditions is because the Joker was the card in the deck of cards you chuck aside so you don't expect it, and then it comes back and bites you in the ass. But
yeah,
if you remember Batman 66, he was goofy, and it was the first time the Joker showed up in 15 years. But he was fun. He was robbing banks with laughing gas and slapping people in the face with fish. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that ties into a thing that. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but that ties into a thing I saw where it's in the Nolan movies or any kind of quote unquote more mature or adult bat media, the writers, they just kind of they make Joker this edgy terrorist dude, but in the kids media with the animated series, they actually have to come up with a way to make the Joker threatening and also child friendly, and I think that's a big staple in making an interesting Joker.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. I think Batman the Animated Series Joker is the perfect way of doing it because he had moments where he was very goofy, but then you would see some of his crimes or some of the things he would do to people or how he treated Harley Quinn, and you would be like, oh yeah, he is an actual serious threat at the end of the day.
And going back to the animated series Joker for a second, and by the way, I apologize to the audience for this tangent. This is just something I needed to talk about. But I remember I can't remember exactly what episode it was, but this guy cuts off the Joker in traffic. So what does the Joker do? He goes to make his life a living hell for 2 years just because he cut him off in traffic one day. And that kind of petty is perfect for the Joker. And going back to The Dark Knight for a second, there's little hints of that wanting to try and be like that kind of dark humor thing with the Joker.
Yeah, with the pencil scene. I actually laugh out loud at that every time. It's a pretty good bit.
That's a dark humor thing, and that's why I kind of cut the Nolan Joker a little bit of slack, because they try, right? They at least tried a little bit with the humor, but it's a weird tendency in rated R properties, the Mortal Kombat movie trailer, for instance, and certain R-rated flicks, that because it's supposed to be R-rated and super serious, they decide to not do humor, which is a huge mistake, especially if you're going to be doing the Joker. Because obviously you want the movie to be taken seriously, but you can take somebody seriously, and you can take a property seriously and still have them be threatening. I mean, that's the whole point of the Killing Joke Joker. As much as I'm kind of on that story, the idea that Joker wanted to kind of make the darkest, most twisted joke possible to try and make Commissioner Gordon snap is a very Joker thing to do. So I got to give them points for that at least, which was why when I saw that Mortal Kombat 11 had the Joker, I was like, oh dear Christ, no! And yet, I will say this, I actually enjoyed the Joker more than I have most other Joker properties, strictly because his moveset is so goofy in this game.
He's like, I literally have a variant for him called Sideshow, because it's like, it's so good. Like the little bat puppet he pulls out. Oh, I love the bat puppet.
I love that he literally made a firearm out of Batman who hates guns. It is such such a dark joke.
Yeah, that's the kind of dark, ironic humor that I want the Joker to employ more.
Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the Joker, and, I wasn't personally too excited for him in MK11. I don't play him, but I will say that I do think they were very creative with his moveset.
What they did for me, that I think the best way to describe it was that they made a grittier MK versus DC Joker, because the boxing glove on the springs, the guns, all of the goofy mannerisms that he has, the parry, it's all from MK versus DC, but they just took it up a notch because it's Mortal Kombat. You kind of have to in terms of the violence thing. So that's why I'm like, Joker has kind of grown on me a bit, although I personally would have taken Deathstroke if I had to have a DC guest.
Oh man, yes, I miss Deathstroke so much.
RoboCop for me was a complete waste of a DLC slot. I mean, sure, RoboCop fans, cool, but honestly, what does RoboCop bring to the table that Terminator doesn't? A really big sniper rifle and a riot shield. That's it.
I love the Cobra Assault Rifle. I'm gonna have to fight you on that. The Cobra Assault Rifle.
I will say the giant yes, I will say the Cobra Assault Rifle is fantastic, but is it worth an entire character slot for when the Terminator could have had a minigun special move?
See, I was watching Ed Boon do an interview where he ran through every single Mortal Kombat character in 11, and he did explicitly say that he wanted to go big with MK11, and he wanted every single popular 80s film action hero of the time. So he wanted everyone that he could get, and he said he was pretty proud of all that. But I agree, it wasn't necessary. It's cool that they wanted to do a big 80s thing, even though Mortal Kombat came out the 90s, didn't it? Came out 92.
My problem with some of the 80s guests is that with Rambo and RoboCop well, I can't say Rambo entirely, but RoboCop didn't exactly have the most interesting moveset to watch, because I'll be fair, zoners, especially NetherRealm zoners, aren't always the most interesting characters to watch. But I couldn't help but feel like this is something an actual Mortal Kombat character could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is with those 80s things is that I found recently that there was a whole shebang where a licensing company had put up an article explaining their pleasure in Mortal Kombat, World of Tanks, Fortnite, and at least one other property that I can't remember off the top of my head.
I remember Evil Dead was listed, one of the Evil Dead properties.
Evil Dead was going to be in Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, Ash Williams was actually supposed to be in Mortal Kombat 11 instead of the Joker.
Oh.
But what
that
happened
would've been
was
so
that
much
the
better.
rights fell through, so Joker got pushed up from the Aftermath expansion to Combat Pack 1, and then they had to fill in that slot for Combat Pack 2, so they went with RoboCop, who is owned by the same corporate conglomerate as Ash Williams. So,
Oh. Because I remember they did put Ash in Dead by Daylight. I've never played it.
that's what it was. It was Dead by Daylight. I was trying to remember was what the other guy was talking about was Ash.
I do enjoy Dead by Daylight, but Ash Williams was a very misplaced character because it's a game where you're, like, at least for the survivors, you're completely defenseless and you don't really say much, where Ash Williams, most of his character is the wacky weapons he uses.
Yeah, he's
and
very
his charm
quippy,
and
you
wit.
know, this is my boomstick.
Yeah, which is exactly why R.I.P. Telltale, by the way. But I recently got into checking out Poker Night at the Inventory, which was their poker game, and that's just a guest character bonanza. Poker Night at the Inventory 2 in particular had Brock Sampson from the Venture Brothers, Claptrap from Borderlands, the bartender is Moxie from Borderlands, Sam
Hell
from
yeah.
Sam & Max, and Ash Williams from Evil Dead is also there as a guest. They didn't get Bruce Campbell as a voice, but the guy they got was pretty damn close. And it's hilarious, like, watching Ash Williams and this 6-foot dog who is like a freelance police officer chew the fat while one of them gets a straight flush because GLaDOS from Portal is dealing the cards as well. Like, if there was ever a third one, this is actually part of the reason why I asked you earlier, Mono, about like what poker game you'd want to have, because I was so captivated by the idea of random characters playing a game of Texas Hold'em that I just had to. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time. But
That would be interesting.
But to wrap up the point with guest characters, overall I'm 75-25 yay, but I was burned by Mortal Kombat 11, even though I grew to like Rambo, particularly because like he's a very special forces character. If he was like a guest in MK2, I think that would have been a lot better, if that makes any sense, because it was a very more grounded roster. And Spawn was awesome, and I'm still hoping beyond hope that the Doomslayer shows up, but we're just having...
My boy. I want it.
I mean, come on. Doom Eternal Doomslayer is just begging to be slapped.
Doom Eternal's so good. I need to replay that on Nightmare mode. Oh, man.
You gotta. All right. So our next question, or our next topic is, it's an interesting one because this is a little more on the competitive side of things. So that I feel like this is going to go by pretty quickly, since I don't think you guys are particularly interested in the competitive scene at all, are you? For fighting games?
I mean, I don't really participate in tournaments, but I do like to play online here and there.
Okay. Yeah.
Depending on the game.
Right. So I threw in this point. What do you think is the best way to balance a fighting game? And I think I'll start with this one because I think I have a pretty good idea of what to do with that, and that's balance the roster around one of your top 10 characters. So with Mortal Kombat 11, I would try to balance the roster around 2 or 3 characters that are particularly top tier. So I'd balance them around like Jackie Briggs, Cetrion, and Shiva would be my examples for that, right? And I try to uplift the roster and balance it around them to try and kind of get them at that level, so to speak. Which it's an interesting idea to kind of try and do, but it makes sense because if you look at tier lists, there are characters that like are really good, and then you have the decent ones. And in older fighting games, it's like you have the god tiers versus the crap characters. Like in Third Strike, Chun-Li and Yoon were your only real competitive options alongside Ken. And if you were playing Q, good luck, because you were toast, because that was how bad they were in that game. But if you balance,
it's so funny to me.
Yeah, but if you balance it around kind of the top tiers and try and kind of get everybody around that approximate level, sure, you're going to still have variance. Like Shao Kahn is still going to be probably one of the worst characters in the game in terms of gameplay perspective. But if you balance it around that, then you won't have a weird situation where it's like why would I ever want to play Shao Kahn when Kotal Kahn exists? That sort of thing, you know what I mean? So that's kind of what I think is the best way to balance a fighting game.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to do it, I think.
Any contributions you guys would like to make, or is it best?
I mean, I think it ties into my point from the launch roster size about, like, you know, first of all, filling the role so everyone's going to be good at something, you know? Like, you will, if you dig around in the game enough, you will eventually find a character that suits you. And that's a pretty good way to balance. But also, I think, God, yeah, okay, so in MK11/Injustice 2, which is basically like a testing ground for the variant system, not variants, variants. Yeah. It was like, that's pretty cool, but, you know, in Injustice 2, you had pieces of gear which, like, affect how much damage you do and how much health you have, and that was kind of fucked a little bit. I was not a fan of that. But what I was a fan of was in MKX, how you had 3 different variants, and you could choose between, like, 3 set variants, and you could choose which one you liked. And so you get a kind of competitiveness without actually being distinctly better than, you know, another set. Although I will say, I did cheese Jason's Resurrection variant a lot.
Jason was one of the best characters in Mortal Kombat X.
Yeah.
When Slasher, which is like the big damage variation, is the worst variation for Jason, and it's still really good, you know you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a system like that where it's like, not, you know, you unlock gear pieces of whatever. I think you should have 3 set variants with different like character designs and different move sets. And if you just fine-tune that a little bit, I think you could have a really nicely balanced fighting game while still maintaining like a good competitiveness.
So when you were with what you were looking at in Mortal Kombat X, you thought that their first attempt at the variation system was their best.
Yeah, that gelled really nicely with me because it gives you options without overwhelming you.
Fair dues. And then you don't get moves that are banned either, like Terminator's armor move. Which...
Yeah, like with the ones that are banned in comp. Even though I don't play comp, so it's like a non-issue to me.
Yeah, no, I gotcha.
When it comes to balancing, I feel like the best way to do it, here's something I try really hard to firmly believe in, is that we should be buffing characters more than nerfing. I think a perfect fighting game, or at least a near perfect fighting game from a competitive standpoint, is when almost all of the cast can really win a tournament. And instead of just like heavily nerfing characters who tend to be more powerful than the rest, obviously make adjustments if like a certain character's attack is way too much, but yeah, like instead of nerfing like Jackie, Cetron, etc., maybe give more attention to the lower tiers like Scarlet, Collector, etc., who don't get nearly as much tournament play, because I still don't know why NetherRealm, a random point last year, just decided to shoot Scarlet in the foot like that. I don't think she was a character that was that...
more specific, because it's like Scarlet has been getting shot in the foot a lot in the patches.
Like, she wasn't even a character that was relatively powerful. She was just like your standard zoner that could just do like a bit of combos. But NetherRealm just continued to nerf her for no real reason.
Yeah. And why are like all but like 2 of her strings flawless blockable? And why is Blood Clot banned? I talked about this at least once in one of my videos, but Blood Clot is a move that disables canceling like from normal moves into special moves, and you can't use meter. That's banned. But what's not banned is Dragon Stance that turns Shiva into an artillery turret. Like, Be consistent, man! Are we going to ban... Or, like, if you're going to ban that, why are you not banning the 20% damage meterless fireball combo conversion ender? What is happening with you people?
Scarlet could kind of use it, considering that, like, again, she is at this point a bottom 5 character, from what I remember hearing last.
Not in my heart. I love Scarlet so much.
Like I have like a cadre of 6 main characters in Mortal Kombat 11. Kotal Khan has been my longest time guy since he was bottom 3 in the first season of time. Scarlet, Baraka, Nightwolf. Fuck, I love Nightwolf.
He's so much fun.
And Spawn were my 5, and then just recently I started picking up Frost. And by the way, I just want to say I absolutely love Cyberfrost. The whole idea of like instead of putting her in an exosuit, they they almost, for lack of a better term, cyberpunk her, and I think that was a really unique way to make her cyber. Make her, or show, not tell that she hates Sub-Zero, because Sub-Zero doesn't like the Cyber Initiative, and Frost is fully embracing it, and make her, in my opinion, more interesting than she was in the 3D era. So,
true.
But that's my piece on that. Are we ready to move on to the next thingamajig?
Sure.
Sure.
Sweet. That thing is, besides the mandatory modes for a fighting game, and I'm considering mandatory as like training mode, arcade mode, single fight versus the PC or your friend, and online matchmaking. So like you go online and you fight people and whatnot. What kind of modes do you want to see in a fighting game? It can be just a special kind of challenge mode, or it can be something sillier like I don't know, Motor Combat from Mortal Kombat Armageddon as an example. What do you want to see? Matty, why don't you go first?
Yeah.
Definitely mini games. I was fucking furious. I was incensed when they removed Test Your Might from MK11. I was furious. And also, I'd like to see you know that racing game they had, like, I think it was Armageddon? I want to see that back in, like,
Motor Combat, yeah.
Like, that was... You can tell the devs were just having fun with some of their ridiculous concepts. Chess combat, puzzle combat, motor combat, test your luck. And now they relegated test your luck to being the most ridiculously difficult towers in Mortal Kombat 11, and I hate it. Seriously, at the final end of there's a reason why they give you 30 days to complete that tower challenge, is because you go to the end and you're fighting somebody who's got 10,000 health, and all of the people that you fight are immune to an element, resist an element, and are weak to an element. They tried to turn Mortal Kombat into Pokemon, and they did it badly. Especially when you consider that I don't think you can use consumables. And the first time I went through those towers, I went against a Sonya who was immune to physical damage. Meaning she was immune and had 10,000 health, but she was also immune to 80% of the attacks in the game with 10,000 health.
It's insane.
It's so stupid.
I forgot to mention in balancing, Mortal Kombat should probably balance their bosses better, because, oh man, Kronika was some bullshit. Kronika was some bullshit, and Brainiac was some bullshit also. Oh man.
And the thing is that, like, it's weird because, in my personal experience, MK9 had the most difficult boss in Shao Kahn. But, for some reason, like I never had trouble with Kronika, weirdly enough, and I never had trouble with Boss Brainiac, but MK9 Shao Kahn hurts my soul.
Yeah, like the only bosses I've ever had problems with in like NetherRealm / Midway games were MK3 and MK9 Shao Kahn. Coming from someone who plays Street Fighter and King of Fighters, I've seen some particularly hellish boss characters. some incredibly hellish boss characters. Gil in Street Fighter 3, if you knock him out with a full bar of meter, he will get up and completely heal himself unless you like interrupt him in time. So I've never seen like a NetherRealm boss do that, and I'm surprised they didn't try to do something like that with Chronica, where she would just rewind the fight.
No, and then what they
And
did
if you
is
beat
that
her-
they ended up making her like a shitty Mega Man Boss Rush boss for some reason.
Yeah.
But anyhow, any other alternate modes for you, Maddie, or?
No, it's pretty much just the mini games. I want them to do silly things again. You know, I want the Testeel Might. I want the racing car game.
I want to smash.
I just
I want
want
to smash
stupid
cars again in
things.
Street Fighter. God damn it!
I want a redesigned puzzle combat so badly.
Ooh, like especially with like all the like with Tetris 99 being in the explosion that it was, I could only imagine how well that would have worked for Mortal Kombat.
I would, with like Puyo Puyo Tetris being like a pretty big puzzle game and having like this cutesy art style with all these cute looking characters, I'd love to see Mortal Kombat try to parody that by having like cutesy, cartoony like styles for the Mortal Kombat characters, while also still have like the violent gore whenever like a character loses.
Puyo
Just to
Puyo
juxtapose it.
Tetris into Happy Tree Friends with ninjas. I like that.
Pretty much.
Oh god, I'd love to see like Rock'em Sock'em Robots in Mortal Kombat, where you literally just have like, I don't know, you just X and square, and then it's just that.
Oh, that would be, yeah. With Tester Might, that would be a really good way to actually do it as like an alternate version, because MK9 had Tester Might, Tester Sight, Tester Strike, and then a bunch of random tower things. And I think the Rock'em Sock'em boss is actually a really good idea, especially if you could only play as the cyborgs. So you're like Sector versus
Yes.
Cyrax, and then
Oh my god.
button mash until one of the heads pops off.
I think you should have all the cyborgs and Jax.
Oh, yep. Oh, that would be hilarious. And what about you then, Mono?
Aside from mini games, I would like to see fighting games include more, well, it is somewhat common, but mission modes where the game has you try out different combos for different characters. It's just my problem with that specific type of mode is that it is rare that it's done well. I just want like a mode where it can kind of teach you how to play a certain character and just give you a couple like easier combo strings, some more standard ones, and then maybe some more difficult ones. A lot of fighting games will take like combo missions and be like, okay, I hope you're ready to break your fingers to get like a 40 hit combo.
God, man.
Like Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe was pretty bad with that.
I'm just gonna switch cameras views for a second because I'm having Vietnam flashbacks of friggin' Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe's combat challenges. Ah! Fuck you, Scorpion.
Oh, and this isn't exactly a gameplay mode exactly, but I would like for more fighting games to have galleries.
Oh man,
Because
yes.
I'd love to see more concept art. I'd love to see more like official artwork. Certain fighting games with galleries will even include artwork from like the past games. I would love for Mortal Kombat to do
I'd
that because
love
they already
the,
have a pretty. What's
oh
that?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say MK11 has a really good gallery, but like I'd love to just have a lot of official art for MK1 through 10 in the game.
Yeah. And I love like the MKX character viewer where you can like zoom in on the models and stuff. I love a good character viewer.
Oh, I
think
love
more
that.
games
I
should
love
have
character viewers.
Oh yeah, and
And like you can look at different skins as well.
yeah, and I like that they kind of implemented that in the customization for Mortal Kombat 11 because they
Yeah,
have
that's funky. Like they have a photo mode, yeah.
except it's in my opinion the worst damn photo mode I've ever seen in a game because I'm spoiled by things by like Spider-Man and Horizon Zero Dawn and
Oh yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah.
I wish Injustice 2 had like a better model viewer.
But I think that's I think it's fine for me, the photo mode, because in games like Spider-Man, you know, you've got so many options. You're like swinging around the city, or you're like mid combo or whatever. So you have so many opportunities for cool photography. You know, compared to you, where they're just like standing there, just doing like a couple of looped idle.
Yeah, I totally get that. But for me, that's one of the modes I want to see. I want to see a better photo mode for fighting games, and I have kind of an idea for it. I just came up with this. Where, let's take the Mortal Kombat 11 character viewer, for instance, right? And let's say you can pick different things for the characters to perform. Like, let's say you're Jackie Briggs, because I kind of have Jackie on the brain recently, and you want to perform her Snake Eater string for, and what you can do with that, in theory, is that she can just loop the Snake Eater string, and you can slow it down and then pause it, rotate it, get just that perfect angle.
Oh shit! You know what that reminds me of? Freaking Soul Calibur 6. You can do that in Soul Calibur 6.
Yeah, see, right? Because you have like 30 different poses, and then you have different speeds for poses to get the perfect right moment. That would...
Yeah, and they just like loop different, just like simple punches and kicks, maybe a couple of fancy ones, and you can slow them down, speed them up. Yeah, like that, exactly like that.
You can sock it in some random silly animations. Like, who doesn't want to see Scorpion throw up the double peace sign and lift one of his legs up like some sort of anime schoolgirl?
I think, obviously Cyberpunk 2077 got its fair share of flack. Well deserved, but I really like the photo mode, and I think, in the character viewer stage in Mortal Kombat, they could do something like the Cyberpunk photo mode, where you can like do different poses, different frames, stickers, blah blah blah.
And then you could also have finder camera control, like FOV, lens flares.
Yeah.
And then God of War also comes to mind, because God of War is a super serial game, right? But you can make Kratos like puff his cheeks out and then make Atreus
do funny faces.
Like, could you imagine if we could make Shao Kahn do like a blep, just like a little blep? Like, that would be hilarious. But another mode I think would be really good to see, I think, would be a sort of character bio viewer. And I'm not talking like because there was kind of this sort of thing in MKX, but I was hoping that they would expand upon it, because I think it was done the best in Injustice 1, where you got power set, bio, where they first appeared, right? But
that's pretty cool.
I think, but like, if you take the Injustice 1 model, and then you add one more thing to it, which is, who remembers Mortal Kombat Armageddon's, I think they were developer diary style character breakdowns?
I remember.
I got into Mortal Kombat at MKX, so...
Okay. All right. So the point is that there would be like these little videos that would explain a character. There'd be like a voiceover and then some dev opinions, right? Like, the dev opinions are not needed, but like, I can almost picture it being like a Special Forces database that you would enter. And then you would go in, find the entry for Scorpion, and then somebody, Sonya, Jax, Cassie, Takeda, or whoever, would then explain who that character is. Like, better example, do you guys remember for Mortal Kombat 11 when they started using Johnny Cage to, like, promote certain characters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see too much in Killum promotion, actually, but that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, so what they would do is that they would have, like, Johnny Cage explain who a character is in his own Johnny Cage way. But imagine if they did that for every single character in Mortal Kombat 11 and gave them their own little Johnny snapshot or something.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun.
Especially since Johnny Cage is, hilarious in Mortal Kombat 11 and MKX. But...
Something another example of like a bio page that I really love was how Marvel vs. Capcom 3 did theirs. You would get like the real names, since half the cast is superheroes and supervillains. You'd get like the first comic or game they appeared in. You'd get like a bio. You'd get like a model viewer within it. And also you would get like a little chart where it would have different stats like intelligence, strength, etc. And
Marvel 7 scale. I remember those from my X-Men book that I have.
Thank you for saying that, because like I wasn't sure how to properly name it.
Because they're all it was like intelligence, power, absorption, combat skill, and all that, and then it's like on a scale of 1 to 7 for each of those stats.
I always enjoyed that, especially comparing certain characters. Like Dante and Virgil from Devil May Cry have exactly the same stats, except Virgil has one more point of intelligence than his brother. It's just details like that I just really love.
Yeah, like those little things. It's those little things that help make a fighting game really special. And I think that's why and that's the main reason why I brought in those mandatory modes, was that, like, what are those things from older fighting games that seem lacking in modern fighting games that, if we saw them come back would be good. And we had, like, photo modes, as like, or rather better photo modes. We had bio viewers, galleries, mini games. I mean, again, I've said this once and I'll say it again. Where is my destroy a car mode in Street Fighter V, Capcom? Come on! You have the perfect character to set that up too in Abigail. And whatever. Next up, this is going to be fun. Mono, name some pet peeves in fighting games. Those little things that really annoy you.
I'd have to, this kind of goes into what I was saying earlier. Fighting games with combo trials that have these extremely over-the-top, ridiculously difficult combos to pull off. When am I ever going to use these? These require so much timing that in an online match where the netcode probably won't even be that great, I'm not going to risk that sort of stuff. Another pet peeve.
And this can be like for fighting game communities too, because everything involving the fighting games in general as well. I should probably clarify.
Okay, that's much easier to think of then. I am tired of people asking for characters to be banned. Especially if it's like a normal character in the roster that can just be easily balanced.
Shiva!
Yeah, I understand that Shiva and Jackie, for example, are very tough characters to fight, but it just kind of sets a bad precedent if we just ban those characters outright. The only time I can justify a character being banned is if either A, they're just so extremely powerful that they just need time to be balanced before being legal. That's totally fine. I can understand that.
Like that DLC moratorium that they put on MKX when Tanya came out.
Yeah. And then another example is like boss characters who are meant to be extremely ridiculously powerful. Like, for example, Street Fighter II Turbo. Akuma is the only character in the entire game that can throw projectiles in the air. And among his other ridiculously powerful abilities, there was just so much to him that they couldn't have him be playable in tournaments, because every tournament would just be Akuma's. There would be no other characters.
Yeah, it's the same reason why for Street Fighter 3 Third Strike Online Edition, they straight up banned Gil from online play, because you would only...
They can't have a character who can heal.
You can't have a character
that can
resurrect, do 80% damage with a single super move.
Full screen super that's takes so much damage even if you block it. Gil was not meant to be playable, at least not in a tournament.
Yeah, the last character I can think of the last character I could think of from a fighting game that is worth banning because they're busted is Inferno from Soul Calibur 6. Once you unlock that asshole, it's game over.
Yeah.
He has that one super ridiculous helicopter move that is active for an eternity, and thank God Soul Calibur doesn't have chip damage, because that would just straight up kill you, because it's so ridiculously easy to repeat. It's almost no.
Overall, I just feel like we shouldn't ban characters unless they're meant to be extremely overpowered boss characters that aren't meant to be balanced, or it's like with the MKX example, they just need a little time for devs to be okay, let's see if this character is extremely broken, and we'll give it some time, and we'll put out like a little patch before we make them tournament legal, that sort of thing. I can't think of, I'm sure if I gave it more thought, I could think of like more pet peeves, but I don't want to like be here all like, I don't know. Those are like the two big ones I can think of.
That actually reminds me that the MKX DLC moratorium, I forgot to mention this in the last point. I'm just going to make this real quick. A PTR mode. Matty, have you played Overwatch?
Oh, yeah. But I haven't played PTR, actually. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, PTR is a sort of separate server from the rest of the servers in Overwatch. And the idea is that they use that server to test balance patches and then make those final tweaks before they actually make those patches go live based off of player feedback. It's essentially beta testing a patch. Why can't fighting games that are very patch happy these days implement something similar? Because evidently, if they want to check and see what's broken and what isn't, who better to break your game than fighting game players?
Honestly, I feel like if we had that with MK11, Scarlet and Aaron Black wouldn't have been hit so hard.
Yeah, so unnecessarily hard too. And I wouldn't. The one change that I think, and I'll rant about this at another time. But there's one rant about changes overall that just kind of gets on my nerves. But Matty, what annoyances do you have with fighting games that you would like to vent to the world?
Similar to Mono, it's not so much the impossibly long combos, although those do frustrate me to no end. I love Catwoman in Injustice 2, but she's fucking unplayable because her combos are insane. But it's more about the chaining combos that get me, because you have to be so fast on fighting games, and like I said, I grew up on first-person shooters, which is just a whole different ballpark. So I've never had much practice chaining combos. So I can do like one, maybe two, and then it's just nothing for me. So my only strategy is to just memorize like 2 or 3, like 3 or 4 button combos, and then just go ham on those.
Right, stick to your strings instead of putting them all together for one ridiculously long.
Yeah, and I wish that, the window for the button presses, the timing, was just a little bit wider so that, it could be more, it could be easy to string those, like, big brain plays together.
Yeah, I agree that can be extremely frustrating, especially when you have characters in some fighting games that have one frame links. And, and this is particularly prevalent in Street Fighter and was very prevalent in Street Fighter 4, where if you wanted to do your combos, your margin for error was literally a single frame, which is 1/60th of a second. That is, if I remember correctly, 15 times faster than humans can blink. So if you don't nail that timing down to the finest infinitesimal possible period of time in a fighting game, you're screwed. And that's why I didn't like Street Fighter 4 for the longest time, because those links were so tight that it's like, what's the point? And then I kind of started to get into it a little bit, and then when they expanded some of the links for some characters with target combos, like for Ibuki and Elena, those were really good. But no, I get you. The links can be stupid.
Yeah, and it's because of those links that I tend to gravitate towards, like, zoning characters and, like, keeping people away from me. Like, my best character in Injustice 2 is probably Red Hood, because, he's got the guns, he's got, like, the bombs to keep people away from him. Green Arrow, also a big one.
God, I love playing Green Arrow.
Character power. He's so fun.
Yeah, and on that, I've got a few pet peeves. One, people who think that a certain style of fighting game character is not valid. Like Mono, how many times have you seen on internet discourse for fighting games that zoners are spammers and are terrible and shouldn't be used? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I can understand why people would think like a zoner or a grappler, for example, are annoying. Like I I jokingly say stuff like, "Oh, if you play Sub-Zero and MK11, I don't trust you. You're evil, etc." But like, I'm not gonna trash an entire archetype of a fighting game character, especially when I think like people play differently. You know, like for example, one way someone can play like a zoner like Cetrion could be completely different to how like a different Cetrion player uses her. Some like spammers are bad, obviously, but the way at the end of the day, I think you just kind of have to prep yourself for players like that and try to figure out what to do in the moment.
And even then, even then, I'm never bothered. Like, I'm fairly rare in this, but I'm never bothered by spammers because, like, for me, spam is actually quite a valid thing to do. If you got a move that's really strong, why don't you use it? Right? It's the same. It's the reason why Shiva Stomp is used all the time. And while it's annoying to see the same move over and over again for some people, sure, at the same time, it's not. If it's worth using, it's worth using. So I'm not usually bothered by that sort of thing. But what kills me is like when was when I mentioned that I used to play Green Arrow a lot I used to play Green Arrow and Deadshot a lot in Injustice 2, and then you kind of just get blown off because you're just playing Mr. Keep Away. You're not actually fighting. Bullshit! Bullshit! I'm not actually fighting. I'm just keeping you where you can't hit me. That's important.
Exactly. Because it's like, with the chaining combos, like I said, it's hard to chain those motherfuckers. So I just do like Deadshot's thing where he pulls out the assault rifle and just fires like a couple quick shots down.
Like, that's a completely valid way of fighting.
Because I don't know if you noticed, dog, but I'm bad at this game. So if you hit me, I'm gonna lose.
That you're bad at the game per se. You're just bad at being up close and personal. And there are characters that if you get up close and personal, like as a character their design is, you get close to them, they have to start writing their will. Dulcim in Street Fighter is a perfect example of that. Because his whole shtick is that he Mr. Fantastics you, but if you get too close to him, he has to teleport to get away, or you're screwed. You know what I mean? So like, different people fight in different ways. Just because the person is playing ridiculous keep away doesn't mean that it's overpowered or, like, if it's annoying, I understand, but you shouldn't, like, devalue that method of fighting because playing keep away is its own kettle of fish compared to doing combos. Like, I assume, Maddie, you already know that, like, some long-range attacks are better at certain things than others, right? Like, if you're Red Hood, you're not going to throw a mine at close range. You're going to try and get them to back up before you start chucking mines, right?
And, like, the thing is, right, they've got, like, these different variations on one move. So you've got, like, the ground mine, then you got the close ground mine, then you got, like, the very far ground mine. But those are really hard to pull off because you got to, like, hit that button of, like, to know where it is, real fast. So I don't have time to drop a ground mine and wait for them to get close to it because they're gonna bounce away. They know what's up.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Using zoning and keep away is just as valid and complex as a combo focused fighting style. It's just that you have to apply your brain a little bit differently. You can't like as Cetrion, I can't spam boulders. I just can't because it's going to be too easy for the opponents to get in on me, right? So that's why I have Tendril Pull, Heat Ray, Earthquake in some variations. I have different things for different scenarios to keep you back so that you don't, touch me and steal half of my health, Spawn. So so that's the one thing. And the other really major pet peeve that I was kind of talking about is when a patch comes out and it changes a character in a certain way, shape, or form, right? It doesn't happen too often, but this really irritates me. But like when a move changes and they don't change that one last thing that just irks me. The main example I had in mind is Aaron Black's Acid Pour. Before it was patched, Aaron Black would whop you over the head, then pour the acid on your head. Then he would amplify so that he could get the gunshot. Well, that had to be changed because people were complaining about a 50% damage ender, which, sure, that could have been toned down a little bit. I understand that. But then Acid Pour becomes, you mollywop the person in the head, then you stab them with a gun and shoot them to help balance that out. They kind of reverse which animations are what, right? But they never changed the name of the move. It's still called acid pour, even though really it should be called something like pull or rifle shot or something like that, because that is what you're using most of the time instead of, spending your bar making the move live up to its name. Be consistent with your naming conventions, fighting game people. Anyway, that's my the one little thing that's it's so it doesn't matter, but come on. All right, okay. So since we mentioned this a couple of times before, we're on the topic that I think people are going to be really keen on, and that is, how would you create your best? I wrote it down as perfect, but there's no such thing as a perfect tutorial. But what is your best version of a fighting game tutorial? And who started on pet peeves? That was Mono, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with my pitch for a fighting game tutorial. Overall, I think the framework that they had for late Injustice 2 Mortal Kombat 11 is great. But the thing that they should do is, which was brought up, was they should teach combo structure a little bit better, and they should teach defensive options a little bit better, because
for sure.
Because as good as the tutorial currently is for Mortal Kombat 11, it has quite a few gaps that the game kind of expects you to figure out on your own, and some of those things just don't. I legitimately still can't flawless block anything.
For sure.
I can flawless block. The first flawless block I ever pulled off in my entirety of playing Mortal Kombat 11 online was this season. And that was as I was actively trying it, I got it maybe twice out of the 30 plus attempts that I tried for one of those things. So teaching you what is the better, when to flawless block for certain characters, and then showing certain combo structures and helping you with the timing, I think would be really good. And one other thing I think would be really helpful, this is like an expansion to training mode and whatever, is show the damn hurt boxes. There's some fighting games that let you, I'm pretty sure there's some fighting games that let you show the hurt boxes in certain attacks so you can understand, why am I behind the guy and the fist still connects? Oh, wait a minute, because of this bit over here. But Mortal Kombat, NetherRealm games in particular, are infamous for having some of the wildest hitboxes. How many times, Mono, have you tried to cross up a Jade or jump over a Jade, and you're behind them, and that stupid uppercut still hits you in the back of the head, and it's still, ugh.
I feel kind of guilty admitting that Jade is kind of one of my characters.
Yeah, same.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that uppercut irks me to no end. But if you could show the hurt boxes and then kind of explain a little bit better the concept of the flawless block and explaining some of the links a little bit better, I think the MK11 model for tutorials is really good. Especially since they have characters.
I think it's a really good start.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you got to kind of build on that. And what's really good is that they have character-specific tutorials as well. And to incentivize you to do that and to experiment with the characters, they give you a reward, a skin, or a high-quality mother box in Injustice 2. And that is the kind of thing I think would be really good to see, but I think the unlock might have to be a little more substantial. If it was for MK11, a full gear set of 3 pieces of gear that you can throw on a character to customize with for MK11, I think would have been better than the skin. But the skin's not bad. It's just that they could have incentivized a little bit more for that sort of thing. Know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I get that.
And so, Matty, how would you design your best video game or your best fighting game tutorial?
Well, okay, so MK11 takes you through it already does what I would designate as a good tutorial kind of. It takes you through a couple of reliable moves and then 1 or 2 moves. The thing that irks me about MK11 is that the descriptors are very technical. and they're very like, you know, then it's gonna be great for someone, you know, like me who doesn't really play fighting games all that often. So, you know, what I do is I just like skip the descriptor entirely. It just the combo up on the screen, and then I do that. So I have no idea what any of these moves are doing because it's got all this like fighting game jargon that I don't understand because I don't play fighting games. So I think, you know, more simplistic descriptors, you know,
More like entry level kind of.
Like if there
Like,
were
oh.
like if there were tiers for tutorials, like an actual basic
Yeah.
tutorial,
yeah,
then you're intermediate, then you're advanced.
but I'm saying like if I lay down, you know, like 50 for MK11 and I pick it up and I go to the tutorial to learn some moves, I just want to be like, I want to see this is this move. This is like mid, high, low, overhead. It does this much damage, you know, and then maybe like I can hit options to be like, you know, this is the amount of frames it takes to pull off, you know, and this is like the more technical specs of the move. I can get like a show more kind of thing. And also, I want it to be a little more gimmicky. This is, I think, maybe going to be kind of a deep cut, but there's a mobile fighting game called Shadow Fight. I didn't really play it all that often. I got bored of it pretty quickly. But what I really liked was that the training room, literally a training room. It was like, instead of you, like, say, Scorpion and Sub-Zero or Batman and Superman, which is going to be in every tutorial of Injustice and Mortal Kombat for the rest of time, it's you and, like, a punch bag. And I think that would be really cool, you know, to have, like, you and a training dummy, like a Wing Chun dummy or something like that. And you can pick different weapons and train with those in Shadow Fight. I think that's really cool, you know, just something a little gimmicky, something a little different.
Something to spice
Yeah.
up the tutorial, as it were.
Yeah, I think the the training stage in MKX with like the hologram room, that
I
was
love that.
really
That's
cool.
my favorite training stage.
That was one of my favorite stages of all. I think bringing something like that back.
I have a soft spot for
Um,
training room stages so much because they have
Yes.
such simple designs, but at the same time, they're never too overwhelming. They're a nice place to visit to just practice and train, especially with fighting games where that's literally the only stage you can practice on.
Yeah.
I just like training stages.
And like the thing about, you know, every training, every tutorial in like Mortal Kombat, you're always going to be Scorpion fighting Sub-Zero. I think it would be kind of funky if, you know, Sub-Zero was like a hologram or something like that, you know? Just something a little different in design terms.
Okay, yeah. Just a training version of Sub-Zero where he's a hologram from a training room.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Or like an ice sculpture. I think that would be funny.
Perfect. Like, Sub-Zero creates an ice dummy for you to beat up on. I love it. So what about you, Mono?
I actually think a really good way I'd like to implement like a proper tutorial. Guilty Gear Revelator 2 has probably one of the most expansive tutorials I think I've ever seen for a fighting game, because the game not only teaches you about the simple combat mechanics, the bigger mechanics, movement, how to do certain things. The game offers lots of different individual character tutorials with like how to do certain moves and stuff like that. The game even also, because going back on what you said earlier, Brian, about how like you wish tutorials had like defensive stuff done better, Guilty Gear Revelator 2 has smaller tutorials for specific character matchups where it'll be like, hey, here's how you can either counter or block and then punish this character's move that you'll most likely have trouble with. I think if MK11 had something implemented like that, you wouldn't see people say, oh, I hate Jade's overheads or Shiva's stomp or Sub-Zero's ice slide. I think if the game...
Matchup-specific tutorials. That is brilliant. I love that.
I
And
really like that. That's good.
that makes me think of another thing. Tekken 7, with its like specific frame data stuff, it actually will take replays from matches you play online and will actually pull up little blurbs that are like, hey, you tried using this move and it got you hurt. It would have been better if you used this move.
Yeah.
There are
Wow.
modes.
Oh,
Seriously?
my God, that reminds me.
Oh man. Okay, so NetherRealm, steal from Arc System Works and Bandai Namco, please.
Literally, if Mortal
That's super
Kombat had a
reminds
thing,
me.
I'll let you go first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I was gonna say one of the rare fighting games that I grew up on was Soul Calibur 2 for the PS2, and that was great because you in the tutorial mode or like in the practice mode, you could change the HUD so it was like it would only show you how much health was chipped away on the health bar when you do a move, or it would show you every single piece of frame data and like every single kind of specification about this one move or like somewhere in between, and you could change it, and that was real nice.
Yeah, that kind of flexibility I think is really important for tutorials because we as humans are flexible learners. Nobody's going to learn something the same way as any other person, which is part of my personal gripe with the school system, but that's a heavier topic for another time. But the thing is that some people like to have it explained to them, some people want to do. So having different tutorial options for those kinds of people would definitely benefit video game tutorials more.
Yeah, and like, oh man, I cannot tell you how much of a godsend. Just like being able to turn off all the stats and just like see the health bar, how it works, was, oh man, that was so good. Because I don't know what a fucking frame delay is, but I do know that if I do this move, it's going to chip off this much health. And I can kind of, like cheese my way around that. And it was just so handy.
Just figure stuff out that way, and you can't go wrong, right?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the big one. This is the one that I had to mention to both of you guys in advance and get some details on. This is our Mortal Kombat roster creation exercise. So we're going to spend some time figuring out what characters... If I can actually open up a proper document here. WPS Office sucks. I'm just gonna use Notepad. So where we're gonna create our own 20 to 25 character roster, and I don't know if it'd be easier to explain it and have you transcript it, or if you want to type it into the main Discord chat to kind of show what the roster looks like.
I mean, I could just like rattle them off real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm just gonna set it up so that I can type it out, and then be able to show the peeps at home. Where is display 2? There we go. All right. So we're gonna start with Matt's roster.
If you're gonna show people at home, I can just copy and paste into Discord like after we're recording.
Me too.
Oh yeah. If you could just copy and paste it now, that would actually be perfect because.
Cool.
Because that way, oops, that's not what I want. Because that way I can just like take it off of the recording booth and slap it in there, and then I can show you what I'm talking about. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, of course, silly me. Use Discord's. I gotta use Discord's text feature for that one, and then we can like discuss how we feel about that roster and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think I'll actually use Notepad. And if you hear tippity tapping, that's because I'm working on that real quick.
Okay, well, I'll get to that while I just rattle off my picks. Okay, so for a Mortal Kombat roster, I kept most of the mainstays. So you've got Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Johnny, Jax, Liu Kang, Raiden, Kung Lao, Kano, Mileena, Baraka, Katana, and My apologies to Sonya Blade fans. I like her as a character. I think her moveset is very boring. She's cool as a person, not as a playable character. And then I also have Sindel, Jade, Scarlet, and Frost. And those are like, it's just the Mortal Kombat mainstays for me. And then for DLC characters, have Predator, obviously, but because I'm mad about Injustice. Lady Shiva, I think, would be a very cool introduction. Mortal Kombat. She would be a beast. Cheetah was really fun to play as in Injustice 2. I love Cheetah. She has so many fun like poses and stuff. So super is just beautiful. And then the 20th one is interesting. I've labeled this one as a wild card, and this was an idea for Apex Legends. It works a little better with that kind of like one season a year thing because they cycle seasons pretty fast. It's like any guest character that introduced into Mortal Kombat, and for a limited time for the season, and when the season is over, they remove it and add a new character.
So you'd have some kind of a cycling slot for random characters?
Yeah,
It's this one slot designated for just like a series of characters, and they would cycle through. And I think that would be also a great way to focus test for future DLC characters, like which characters had the best response, which characters had the worst, like which ones can we bring permanent picture in future titles for DLC characters. I think that would be a great way to introduce new fighting styles, new movesets, new characters, and also take them out when they're done and just like that data.
Right, like if you had just as a hypothetical, Ash Williams, RoboCop, and the Joker in that particular slot, and everybody played Ash. Some people played Joker, and nobody touched RoboCop. RoboCop and Joker get the boot, and then they replace them with some other characters.
Sort of, except it would cycle, so we would like to have the roster and then like, Joker first, and then when like the Mortal Kombat season was over and the next one, we could remove Joker and add RoboCop, and then they would remove RoboCop and add, and it would be a great way to have a period of time where they can, really get into how fans would react to a character.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Mono?
I decided to envision my roster as a starting point for a reboot. So I figured instead of trying to base it off of what would happen next after a specific game, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to create this roster as if I can wipe the slate clean and start over Mortal Kombat. I figured, at least for a starting roster, that it should be a mix between original trilogy as well as some characters from the NetherRealm games, and then further expand it with 3D eras and any other remaining trilogy characters that weren't in the base roster. I have Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Liu Kang, Kitana, Kung Lao, Johnny, Sonya, Shang Tsung, Noob Saibot, Jax, Reptile, Melina, Jade, Smoke, Kano, Ermac, just as like original trilogy rep in the base launch game. Scarlet, and Cyrax. I threw in Scarlet, Devora, and Kotal Khan. 3 slots are reserved for new characters, and then the 25th would be the boss character, and I just marked it as either Shao Kahn or Onaga. And I did throw out some DLC ideas. I have Tanya, Tremor, Serena, Sector, Cabal, Sindel, Shiva, Havoc, Fujin, Kai, Quan Chi, Aaron Black, just to name a few characters. Mortal Kombat has so many characters that to start completely new, it would honestly be a little difficult. because I want to try to make sure that I appeal to every type of MK fan there is. I'd want to make sure that like original trilogy fans feel like they have their representation, obviously, like their mainstays. I'd want 3D era characters to appeal to those fans who love those characters. Newer fans would want to see some of the NetherRealm era characters. Like I know Scarlet, Devora, Kotal, Aaron, for example, they've really hit it off with people. Beta, Cassie, etc. And I'm trying to appeal to like 3 different eras of MK fans with one roster.
Which is incredibly hard to do because, fun fact, there are over 80 main characters in the Mortal Kombat franchise, which I think makes it the biggest overall roster in the thing.
Because like out of not including crossover fighters, I think it has the biggest lineup.
Yeah, like in terms of just characters, that is a definite. You're definitely not wrong in that aspect.
Because I'm not going to include like Smash or Marvel vs. Capcom or King of Fighters, since that's like a bunch of characters from a bunch of different series all coming together. Mortal Kombat is all one universe, one series. Obviously, if you exclude the guest characters.
And even
that's just
excluding the guest characters, you still have
a lot.
Like you still have one of the most obscene rosters out there, and I think that would be really, really cool to see. I'm almost done my franchise roster because I had initially envisioned this to be 20 to 25 characters, but it's going to end up being 35 characters because we were taking DLC into account. Oops. But I think I'll just get the first 25 out of the way because that's my main franchise. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, duh. Kitana, Melina, Jade, Jackie Briggs, Cyrax, Nitara, Cyberfrost. I made a point to specify Cyberfrost for this one. Cabal, Kintaro, Scarlet, Tremor, Liu Kang, Ashra, Havoc, Hotaru, not Hutaru, that's an owl. Serena, Fujin, Kung Lao, Cassie Cage, Kotal Khan, Takeda, and Kung Jin are my launch roster. I made a very, very conscious decision that if a character has a direct descendant, so a mother and daughter or father and son type affair, I would not include the parent because, in my personal opinion, that is one of the biggest faults of the Mortal Kombat 11 roster was that they played it too safe with the classic characters. In my personal opinion, Kano, Jax, Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, and I think it was Collector, but he's not relevant to that point. But like those 4 classics, I like all 3 of them. I like 3 of them. I don't like Kano. I hate Kano. Despise that asshole. I think those.
Funny little knife man.
Yes, he's a little knife man, but I don't like him. But those 4 characters shouldn't have been in Mortal Kombat 11, in my opinion. They just shouldn't have because we have 3 Cages and 2 Briggses in one roster, and we don't have the most popular of the combat kids in Takeda, that's Whip Boy. We don't have Kung Jin, who is a huge hit with the fans. Personal niche pick there. Ferritor is missing, and I love me Ferritor. I love Ferritor. And then you have like, who are your 3D representatives in this game? Who are our 3D representatives in the game at launch? Just Frost. Just Frost. That's it. No Kenshi, no Mavado, no Kira, no Havoc. Just Frost. And it's a good thing that they reinvented Frost because otherwise it would have just been null and void Frost, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I think, I have my
base roster actually. Now I think about it.
Yeah, like in terms of overall roster, I think of the NRS games, MKX had the best roster. overall, in my personal opinion, anyway.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do like that MKX took more risks with having 8 newcomers.
Yeah, which, by the way, the only main series Mortal Kombat game that had more newcomers was Deadly Alliance, and they had 10. So
I do think MK11 kind of, trying to think of the right term here, it took a bunch of steps backward, backwards compared to MKX. Like, I have envisioned like rosters for like a actual sequel to MKX. It kind of devolves more into like actual fan fiction since I've included like some of my own original characters in there. But for years, I had accepted the idea of Jax, Johnny, Kano, Sonya, and even possibly Kenshi retiring and letting their children or like apprentices take over in the roster and developing them further, because like I was not a guy, I was never against the Combat Kids, and I wish we were able to see all 4 of them in MK11 again.
exactly. And I mean, if Jackie could get some cool new tech, why couldn't Takeda show up with friggin' new sweet lightsabers? Come on.
I could write a whole essay on how upset I am that Takeda and Kung Jin both have been left out, especially considering how much the White Lotus play into MK11's plot.
Yeah.
That Kung Jin not being there just kind of pisses me off.
Well, that sounds like a video topic for you, eh, Mono?
Oh, for sure. I could do that.
Trying to think, because there's a few other things. Trying to think, because I'm just trying to fill out my guests real quick, because I have 5 ideas for guests. And there's so many actually decently good guests that I'm trying to remember. That guy for sure. And then, just for good measure, let's get one more video game character in there, because this is where this franchise frickin' comes from. That's one thing that always got me, was like, most video game guests are from video games, but Mortal Kombat is like, we are the big budget ones. We can get the Hollywood ones. And they've never done a video game cast character since fucking Kratos. And it irks me. Oh, I know. There we go. So, I couldn't get another video game one off the top of my head. But my DLCs are, for the main characters, are Sector, Reptile, Ferritor, Tanya, and Onaga. And for guests, I have Deathstroke, The Bride, Deadpool, The Slayer, and Ellen Ripley.
Hell yes.
Nice.
Oh my god. I would main Ellen Ripley so hard.
Second, the absolute nanosecond they put Alien in there, my thoughts immediately went to, could we get Ellen Ripley in the future? Because I frickin' love Sigourney Weaver, and I love Ellen Ripley. So I'm just sitting here like, please, Ellen, please, Ellen, please.
And they were pretty hell-bent on bringing back the original actors as well, so I think it'd be pretty cool to have Sigourney Weaver in Mortal Kombat.
And the thing is, too, is that, like, here's the kicker. Sigourney Weaver is 71, and she still looks drop-dead gorgeous. Like, you
I know, right?
To think about.
Like, you don't need to, like, get a look-alike or a sound-alike. Just slap Sigourney Weaver in the freaking motion capture booth, damn it, and then you're set. But yeah, that's kind of what my roster looks like. For those at home who are wondering, my whole thing is that, like I said, I want the kids to actually replace the old folks for once, and I also kind of wanted to give some shout-outs to some 3D characters that don't get a whole lot of love, or some classic characters that don't actually get a whole lot of love, namely Kintaro, because of all of the three of the classic Mortal Kombat characters, there were 2 that have not been playable since Mortal Kombat Armageddon. One is Motaro, and I know NetherRealm refuses to do other body types. Otherwise, I would love to see, like, a Gorgon or a Centaur again. But
They're gonna be so much fun. Oh,
I made a concept because I'm a sucker for making move lists. I made a concept for a giant Gorgon fighter with her own unique caveats and whatnot, but that's neither here nor there. I wanted to just stick with characters that already exist for my options instead of just like having half the roster be new characters. But like,
Yeah.
And the other one is Kintaro. He's the only Shokan who has not been playable in more than one game. I'm pretty sure he was only playable in Armageddon, and he hasn't been playable since. And, you know, poor bastard's getting robbed. He needs to be in there. Plus, I always thought he was the coolest looking of the Shokan. And
I think it would be incredibly funny if they brought mocap back just for a little bit.
dude, Mortal Kombat needs more comic relief characters. I am here for mocap, man.
Oh.
I am here.
People are so aggressively hateful to mocap, but I think he's probably one of the funniest joke characters I've seen in the fighting game series.
Like, and that would be part of the appeal, right? You want a new punching bag? You want to have a laugh? Frickin' mocap is now... No! Idea. Okay, so Street Fighter V is doing a thing where they're using a character named 11, who's like the prototype for 12,
Yes, oh my god, yes.
as a random select, because their whole shtick, 11 and 12, is that they mimic characters, right? And they shapeshift into them. So they're a random select character. Now imagine if mocap filled that same role.
That would be really funny. I always wanted Mortal Kombat to have a character like that. It's just like with variation systems and intros and stuff like that, I feel like it'd be hard to fully implement.
But I think they could do it. I think they could do it.
I think they could figure out a way, yeah.
If you are gonna have like a mimic character, you are gonna have to find a way to distinguish him in some way from Shang Tsung.
Yeah, and I mean the easiest way to do that is to just leave mocap as mocap. Just have mocap motion capture the characters, and you can even have two mocaps, one male, one female, and then they would become those characters, and then Shang Tsung can still be around because he temporarily morphs into those characters. Mocap is permanently that character for the fight.
I think it would be great if like one of his cosmetics was just like a skeleton rig.
Yes!
As it shows up in the fucking computer. With nothing like modeled or textured.
Wireframe mocap, let's go!
Wireframe mocap, let's go!
Also, I gotta say, Maddie, I kind of find it funny that you put a Bat Family character in your DLC, but I know that's because you are such a fan of Bluebird. But
I love Bluebird so much.
But I think it's just funny that you have a Bat Family character, you know, the kind of character that is so against killing in a game where, you know, people rip out people's spines, and it's like, I just think it's funny. I like the idea. I just think it's funny. Sorry, did you cut out there? Because all I got was...
No, I didn't have anything to add to that. I think it's funny too.
Maddie's just like, bring on the Bluebird, come on.
So,
I'm here for that. Okay, now we are coming up to the home stretch. Our penultimate section is Pitch a Fighter. All right, here's the deal. You guys have to pitch a brand new character, either for an original fighting game or for an already existing fighting game. And you guys have 5 minutes to complete your pitch. All right?
All right.
Okay, so Mono, since it's your turn, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so I have a couple different OC ideas for Mortal Kombat because I feel like there's so many different archetypes you could explore. And a fighting style that I always wanted to see, especially since Injustice 2, is a more defensive anti-zoning style. Not even specifically anti-zoning, but something I loved in Injustice 2 was Enchantress's playstyle. I loved playing her. I loved being able to curse people. I loved being able to make it so that I only lose meter when getting hit instead of health. I figured I'd like to have characters that can manipulate people and do that sort of stuff, but in Mortal Kombat. One of my Yep. One of my original characters is a apprentice of Kano who uses cybernetic high-tech gloves that allows her to access almost any technological interface possible. And I was thinking something that she could do as part of her moveset, similar to Enchantress's Hex, is essentially hack the opponent and take away for a short amount of time one of their abilities. For example, one of the hacks could be that the opponent can't use meter for like 5 seconds. One could be the character can't jump for 5 seconds. And I was thinking for like a specific, like an extremely rare, very, very low chance you can get this sort of thing, something that rarely happens, is her hacking the opponent and for like maybe 5 to 10 seconds they can't block.
Ooh. So a sort of techno-sorceress, almost.
Yeah.
Sombra from Overwatch is going to need to take
I was
that
thinking
phone call.
Sombra too.
Definitely. She was definitely one of the inspirations for the character. I was also thinking like absorbing projectiles and reflecting them. Just a very defensive style character where it's less about making huge combos and more preparing yourself for what your opponent might throw at you and making them wish they hadn't, taking away your opponent's abilities, just pretty much fucking with your opponents instead of like going in and doing big combos. You're just standing back and being like, okay, I'm just gonna do like a quick little thing, hack the opponent, do some parries, do some reflex. I just want a very defensive style character that can kind of break the rules of Mortal Kombat. That's one of my OC ideas, at least on a gameplay perspective. After Enchantress and Injustice 2, I want NetherRealm to put a character like her, at least like her gameplay, and give it to a Mortal Kombat character. That is something I've wanted for years.
Does this apprentice happen to have a name?
She does, but I'm not 100% comfortable with sharing like going into complete detail with some of my characters.
Okay, so what letter does it start with so that we can like?
Her name starts with a C, or at least her code name starts with a C.
That works. So we could just use C if we had any questions or anything like that. I had almost pictured her being like a base building character. Would she have anything like that?
What do you mean by base building?
Like she'd be able to erect walls that stop projectiles and then set up turrets in order to defend herself while she's, hacking the opponent and whatnot.
I do imagine that she has something similar to Cassie's drone, something I felt didn't really suit Cassie, especially when in MK11 the drone does not play a part in the story. I thought, oh, what if she can just summon a Black Dragon drone that can do certain things for her while she's trying to set up a bunch of her more defensive stuff. Like once in a while, the drone can shoot out like a laser or something. Something to kind of aid her while she's trying to do all this defensive stuff.
Like a robot Kyuki from Poison Ivy and Injustice 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Matty, do you have any questions for C?
No, that sounds like a pretty cool character. Not my exact playstyle, as you're going to find out shortly, but I think that's something that could offer a lot of opportunities, especially with the drone. I like the drone.
And plus it would just be cool to fight against a character that plays more defensively, just to like flex your anti-defensive muscles, your bunker busting, as it were.
Because after playing a lot of different fighting games, looking at Mortal Kombat, I want to some of my original characters to have more gimmicky gameplay and have their own special, unique things about them. Where, I mean, every Mortal Kombat character is unique from a gameplay perspective, obviously, but I want to try to make some truly unique archetypes.
I gotcha. Okay, so that ended up running just a little bit over 5 minutes, but I mean, hey, that's it was only a little bit. It was just like a quick sentence. So cool. I look forward to seeing C in the future. And if you ever make a move list for C, I would like to see that, please, because I am in on that. Okay, Matty, you are up. Go.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, wait. Before we begin, one quick thing. I have two ideas, but I forgot to ask you. When you said picture fighter, did you mean like Because I have a thing for Bluebird and I have a thing for an OC. So which one did you mean? Or is like,
Oh shit. See, because now I want to do now I want to kind of hear about both, but I have an idea. I'm going to flip a coin.
Okay.
So, okay, so heads is going to be Bluebird, tails is going to be your OC, all right?
Cool.
All right, here we go. Flipping coin. Dun, 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 dun. Tails, your OC, mon ami.
okay, all right. So, I already have an OC, but not specifically for Mortal Kombat. It's just like a character that I created that I can drop into whatever universe and then kind of change accordingly. So, it's Jake Wilson, and he, I want him to be I want him to be a mesh of all my favorite different fighting styles. Like, I know what I said about long range, but actually I'm a big Melina main because she's got that nice of range and, close up and teleport and getting in and out. I also want, Black Manta. He's got some cool moves, and Cheetah and Red Hood. And I want that nice blend of, keep away, and I want that blend of damage. So, Jake's got teleport. He's got, big damage moves. He's got a little bit of heat, like with Scarlet's amplified blood ball. And I want that blend because I play in shooter games. I play very aggressively. I like assault rifles and light machine guns. So probably gonna have a bit of that, like Spawn, where he pulls out like the 2 assault rifles and towards you. I'm a big fan of Blazing.
Gunwalk is one of my favorite things that Spawn does, just because it just looks.
Oh, yes. And also the Spawn's chains. I think those are really cool. And yeah, that's all I want. I want to be able to play aggressively, but I also want the options of getting away when I can, with the teleport. And I want the healing options.
So you want so you kind of have a jack of all trades, master of none style character archetype.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe leaning a bit more into damage, And he's also a fire-based character, so he's got like a lot of fireballs, a lot of like straight shots and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see
that's pretty much all.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a neat concept, and I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of options. But I mean, if we take a look at Spawn, who I think is like the closest I can picture right off the top of my head, like
Spawn is pretty much the closest.
Yeah, like Spawn has a lot of options in and of himself, but they managed to balance him out really well because he does have that really high damage, and he does have that style where he can play at just about any range, but he has that range where he's most comfortable.
Yeah.
In Spawn's case, that's about mid-range with his cape and his chains, but I'm picturing Jake Wilson to be more comfortable further back, like a Deadshot or a...
Yeah, more like Deathstroke, Deadshot, yeah, but also if you get close, he's still not going to have, like, a good time.
That's what I mean, right? Like he has this spectrum zone, like, he's at his best at far range, he doesn't do too hot in the mid-range, but once you get close...
I was thinking more mid-range. Yeah.
It's more like a... So it's more like a... this is going to be a bit of a harsh example, but with a slash thing, where, like, the highest point is where he's good at, and the lowest point, like, that sort of thing. I kind of pictured, like, a U... Oops. That's not what I wanted. I was kind of picturing a U-shaped bell curve with how this character played, but yeah, that slash seems to be better. Anything you would like to add to that, Mono?
I was gonna say characters that don't have any like too apparent weaknesses and kind of benefit in like most spaces always tend to be characters that are really good, safe picks to try out. I personally always feel.
Yeah.
So having a character that can play at different ranges, honestly, for anyone who's starting like playing a fighting game, it's never a wrong choice to pick a character that kind of has everything you kind of want. or can
Yeah,
distance.
Ryu or a Scorpion. There's a reason why those guys have such a wide and open toolbox.
yeah,
So giving Jake a moveset like that is a really good idea, especially if you want him to be like a main character, for example.
yeah,
He has that sort of play style that can complement someone that would be one of the first choices you'd see on a select screen. Kind of like how in Justice 2, the first character you see highlighted is Batman or MK11,
Batman, yeah,
Scorpion and Sub-Zero, that sort of thing.
yeah. And it's also like, you know, you're never gonna get the same way. It's rare to see like two people who play Scorpion the same way. You know, you're not gonna get usually two Jake players who are the same, because you know you've got the different ranges
That he excels at.
Yeah. So you could have those that play keep away or those that want to play rush down. That's really really sweet. Okay. Oh boy. I think after this whole shebang, I'd like to hear what you have in mind for Bluebird, because that would be super cool to see. But
Yeah.
that's for after this whole shindig.
Yeah.
So it's hard because I have so many different ideas for characters that like mostly in Mortal Kombat, because that's kind of my wheelhouse. So I kind of narrowed it down to the top 3 that I think would be most interesting. So we have a giant elephant man, a frog shaman, or the aforementioned Gorgon, the snake lady. So which of those do you guys want to hear?
I want to get into the Gorgon.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So I just started the timer. First, she was one of the oldest of the sort of OCs that I had in mind. She was a Mortal Kombat X character, actually. So her moveset is MKX, and I have yet to update her for MK11. But her name is Vipera, which is VI apostrophe REA, I think is what it is. Or no, it was PERA, like Viper, but with a little extra spice on there. And because she was designed for MKX, I kind of built her around that. So she's got 3 variations and everything. Her whole shtick is that she's a big character. Like, she, from tip to tail, is 14 and a half feet long. She's huge, right? So she's so big that she can't actually properly jump. Oh, wait, my mistake. I just pulled up her profile. Her total length from nose to tail is 21'4". And when she's normally in like resting fighting stance, she's 9 feet tall. She's huge, which was part of that fun because she was inspired by the big Gorgons in God of War 3. But the whole thing with her is that she doesn't have very many strings, but she has a kind of unique mechanic called a pseudo jump, because she's so big that she can't actually jump in the air. Instead, she has to like leap by forcing her body upwards, and then like her body kind of has to catch up because she's like a snake, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of that sort of idea. It's fully armored, but she takes full damage from it. So it's not like she's getting this for free. She's still getting mollywopped for it. And she has like a command grab where she constricts you. She has, of course, the Gorgon is capable of turning people into stone, so she has like a full screen beam that is a high that does that, but you can either block or duck underneath it and that sort of thing. And she even has a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And one of the cool...
Nice.
And
Very cool.
Well, she has a bow and arrow in 2 of her 3 variations anyway. And one of the variations, the whole shtick is that she poisons the arrow, so they do damage over time. And she even has like a Scorpion-style get over here where she'll wrap the opponent by the tail and pull them towards her. And because she can't jump in the same way that other characters has, she needs a way to kind of avoid attacks. So I gave her a dodge where she dodges overhead, high, and mid attacks and all non-low projectiles, but it costs stamina to do that. So
Yeah.
it's that sort of idea. And then Toxic, it's the one where she uses a lot of poison attacks. Underground is the name of this variation, where she doesn't have the bow and arrow, but she has a tunneling teleport and a sort of teleporting underground attack where she pulls you into the ground and beats you up.
Oh, that's so cool.
And
Yeah.
yes, and the last thing is she has a variation that's all about parries. Because as much as I suck with parries, I love them. So she has she has 3 proper parries and a projectile reflect in this variation. So that's kind of the idea behind Vipera. And as a fun little bonus, one of her fatalities is very much inspired by a snake, in which she swallows the victim whole and takes a nap as like her win pose. Like her whole shtick is that she ends up eating the fighter, because that's kind of what she wants to do. As an Outworld Gorgon, she just wants to survive. And hey, there's this hunky-looking monk who can barbecue himself. I'm in. So any questions or comments that you want to throw on with Vipera?
Yeah, 2 things, actually. First was, like, would she have, like, a move similar to Sub-Zero's Ice Clone, which, like, freezes them and, like, holds them in place for a little bit, but, like, a Gorgon stare or whatever?
Well, she has that in the form of, like, a Gorgon stare, where it's like her stare is a big beam of energy that petrifies people.
Oh, okay. So it's like it's avoidable in like that's like how you get the balancing. Okay.
And the second thing is that I really like the finisher where she eats people, because it reminds me a lot of Scorpion's fatality, where he turns into a giant scorpion.
Mortal Kombat 4 represent!
I love that. I miss those. I miss the animalities. Oh man.
It was making me think of Liu Kang turning into the dragon.
Yeah.
That's what that reminded me of.
Right on. And any quick final opinions on Vipera there, Mono?
Not really much else I can add other than saying that, like, I think it's awesome that you chose a Gorgon. I think there's so many archetypes that have never been explored in a fighting game, so it's nice to see them actually get explored.
Well, the big thing is that I kind of wanted to stray away from humanoid designs, because you get so many humanoid fighters because it's an easy animation pain reaction thing to recycle, and it's helpful for fighting games, but you lose kind of that pizzazz and kind of lock yourself off of all the possibilities. Like, a friend of mine actually commissioned an MKX moveset years ago, and he's a big dino nerd, and so am I, so I jumped at this opportunity, and the fighter is a juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex. and some of the variation items, like he wears an ascot, and he's got little dinky boxing gloves on, and whatever. It's just, I just think it would be really funny if, like, we could branch past the humanoid body designs and have, Alex from Tekken, who's a boxing velociraptor, but let's actually make him like a proper velociraptor and whatnot. I think it would be really cool. So I appreciate that you like the idea of a Gorgon being like a more original idea. Mono. Okay, final topic. Pick your top 3 favorite fighting games.
Ooh. This has been the discussion I've been the most excited for.
All right, so I think for this one, normally, I think it is Mono's turn actually, because I did the. No, wait, yeah, it is Mono's turn because Matty's opened up with their roster, and then So yeah, it is Mono's turn. Nope, no wait.
I started Pitch a Fighter, so.
You know what? I'm gonna let you start that then, because I could tell you were excited about that, and I don't mind skipping a turn.
Oh, okay. So I know for sure my favorite all-time fighting game is Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Absolutely one of my favorites for so many reasons. I love the visuals and the animations so much.
Yeah, like Elena is insanely well animated. Same with Chun-Li and then.
She definitely is. Necro and Elena are my favorite characters to play, just because I love not only do I just really like their characters, but I love watching their animations play out. I love the soundtrack a lot. There's just so much. There's the gameplay that, despite the game being released in 1999, it still has such a big love for it over 20 years later. There's just so much with Street Fighter 3 Third Strike that I love that I can't help but still love to this day. And I wish I got into the game earlier. My second choice would be Mortal Kombat X. It's still my favorite Mortal Kombat out there. I love the variation system. I love the story. I just love so much about the game that it kind of felt disappointing to me to go from MKX to MK11 just because I set so much high expectations just because of how much I loved MKX.
Yeah, and we definitely expected more of the MKX characters to actually stick around.
Yeah. I do wish we got certain characters in MKX. Like, I think if we had Jade and Cabal, for example, in MKX, even if they weren't, like, even if they wouldn't be important to the plot, if they just added them, if they threw in Serena and Fujin, oh, it would be for sure my favorite Mortal Kombat, and I think that'd be super hard to dethrone.
Yeah. And who's your bronze medal winner?
This one's actually pretty tough. So it's a tie. You know what? I think I am going to say Injustice 2. Because I spent the past couple days debating if I wanted that or Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 as the third choice. But Injustice 2 has not only a bunch of my favorite characters of all time, you got Sub-Zero, Hellboy, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Black Canary in the same roster.
I love Black Canary.
She's so good.
She has like one of my favorite movesets in any game.
The game also either introduced me to or made me like characters that I previously didn't really like that much a lot more. Enchantress and Atrocitus are two of my favorite DC villains, and I have to blame Injustice 2 for that. I like Black Manta a lot more. I like Jay Garrick a lot more. I like Red Hood a lot more.
Yeah.
Plus the premier skin thing that they did for Injustice 2 was absolutely one of the best ideas they could have done for that game.
Oh, for sure. We have so many. I do wish we got more out of the premier skin system. I went over more into it when Brian and I did the Injustice 3 prediction wish list video. I do wish we got an Alan Scott skin or a Simon Baz skin or Simon Baz. I'm not sure how his last name's pronounced, for Green Lantern.
That would be cool.
Yeah, and I also mentioned that I always kind of thought that the reason why they don't do gender bend skins is because of the hitboxes thing. I always thought that was kind of a stupid excuse, and for me, when it came to for a Green Lantern premier skin, like, no brainer outside of Jon Stewart that they do Jessica Cruz in my mind.
Mm-hmm. That would have been a really good choice. If I could put 3 different premier skins for this character somehow, I would just put John, Alan, and Jessica, because I love all 3 of them. Nothing against Hal Jordan, by the way, but I just always found some of the other Lanterns far more interesting than him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I always thought Jon Stewart was more interesting than Hal Jordan, but that's just because Hal Jordan's been around for so damn long.
And thank you, NetherRealm, for putting Sub-Zero and Hellboy in this game, because those 2 are some of my biggest favorites of all time. And that's really all I can say. All 3 of these games, I still have such a positive mindset towards all these years later.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Matty.
Yes. So my favorite, I'm probably gonna have to go with Injustice 2, because you know, I never really spent much time considering fighting games, so I'm just gonna have to go for that by default because I'm such a big DC Comics fan. And you know, like you said, the cast is great. I do also wish they would do more. Like, I I kind of want Bleeze as an Atrocitus Premier skin. I love Bleeze so much.
Weird, but I would actually kind of be behind having a female character that's like a big bruiser type. You know what I mean? Like I think,
Yes.
like imagine like they kind of did this with Shiva, but could you imagine if they did fucking Big Barda in Injustice 2?
Oh,
I
now you're
would love
speaking my
Big
language.
Barda.
Give me the 7-foot apocalyptian mama. Come on!
Yeah, oh my gosh, she's so good. Yeah, but like the cost is great. I love Red Hood's playstyle. I love Black Canary's playstyle. She has so many good like combos and mix-ups. Oh man. Yeah, it's so good. And all the super moves are really cool. Mortal Kombat X, I'm gonna have to give a slight edge to, because A, Predator, B, the variation system was a lot cleaner. And also, I want Tanya to come. She was kind of...
Everybody wants that flexible queen to come back.
She was so good. She was so fun.
like
So-
between Tanya and Melina, that was like what I want to say 3/4 of the discourse for MK11 on Twitter was like. It was like, bring Melina back and bring Tanya back, I swear. And I do mean that in the nicest way possible, of course, but still. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, oh my god.
And like, god, they were just so good. I do like Mortal Kombat 11's character endings though. I think for like the tower mode, I think Spawn was probably my favorite. He's just like
It was really
made
good.
friends with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. They argue constantly. Like that was
Spawn is
So funny.
the best at that dry asshole delivery. Like,
yes. Oh my god, he's so good. Yeah, but I think I'm gonna have to give the edge to Mortal Kombat X. Also, like the legacy characters, you know, Takeda, Jin, and etc., etc. And the variations, but yeah, the Mortal Kombat. Also, I think I'm not sure how much of a deep cut this is, but a PS2 fighting game that I grew up on was Urban Reign. I loved Urban Reign so
you're
much.
hitting bone with that deep cut, dude. I've never heard of this.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, it was like it wasn't like an arcade fighting game where it's like side by side. It was like a beat 'em up when you're in like this one teeny tiny square arena and you would just like punch through a bunch of guys.
Oh, so it's like a WWE Royal Rumble and less like
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, except it's like a literal street fighting game. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and there was like 100 missions in the story, and they actually got martial law from Tekken as a guest character.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Oh man, it was so good, and my disc is so busted. It's like practically unplayable because the loading takes forever. But I love it so much. Urban Reign is really good. You could probably pick up real cheap from like an exchange store or wherever if you still have a PS2.
Oh man.
or a PS2 emulator.
Yeah, emulator, you could probably play it online. Oh, yeah, it was so fun.
I mean, it's really cool that we got a fighting game that I don't think either us or me or like myself or Mono have ever heard of.
Yeah, I did not grow up on PlayStation, so it's interesting learning about this.
This is why I love fighting games so much, because there's so many different kinds. Like, oh man. See, if I could have made a top 5, it would have still been really hard, but I have to make a top 3. So I'm going to get a couple of honorable mentions out of the way. Mortal Kombat 9 was my first fighting game thanks to Kratos, and overall I think that is the most complete package in terms of modes and things for a Mortal Kombat game, but
Yeah.
but like, because the roster is all classics, it's okay, it's a roster sort of thing, you know what I mean? Godzilla Saved the Earth, I don't really count as a fighting game per se, but it's more of a giant monster beat 'em up, and who doesn't like to play as giant monsters tearing through a city, beating the crap out of each other? And and my final honorable mentions are just like games that I really, really, really want to play, and that's Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and I really want to get back to playing Killer Instinct one of these days. Like, Killer Instinct for the Xbox One and now for PC is like, Okay, what other fighting game can you play as a falling apart golem fighting a fire-breathing cyborg velociraptor? Like, you sold me on that, not to mention all the crazy visuals and, like, best music of any fighting game I've ever heard and all of this stuff. And then Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the roster is ridiculous. Like, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Storm, and then on Capcom side, you have random, like, original characters like Ruby Hart and Amingo, and then you have, like, there's so many characters from MVC2 that don't make it into MVC3 that I really just want to mess around with. Like Cable! Cable's not in MVC3, but he was in MVC2. I would have loved that. But
Yeah, there's definitely certain characters that were in the second game that I wished were in the third. Like, for example, BB Hood from Darkstalkers, absolutely one of the most batshit characters I've ever seen in a fighting game.
Red Robin Hood, but she's a fucking mercenary.
Yeah. Literally, Capcom had to make a 100% human character, but still make her somewhat monstrous. They made her one of the most evil characters in the entire series, while still having her just be like a little girl.
Yeah, you have this little girl in a red bonnet and a dress, and then she's pulling out hitmen and shotguns out of her basket. It's ridiculous. I love it. But in terms of my actuals, like in my actual top threes, my bronze medal winner is the first Injustice. That was probably one of the first fighting games I ever tried to actually kind of get good at. And the roster for the first Injustice is really, really cool because half of the characters there are not in Injustice 2, much to Injustice 2 chagrin. That was
so depressing.
Like Raven, Nightwing, Zatanna, Lobo, Solomon Grundy, and I could literally go on. And the best part was that game was the epitome of everybody was broken. Like, Batgirl had some of the most ridiculous resets in the entire game. Grundy could do 75% in a single combo. Zod had a one-frame aerial charging attack that, like, when you do it in the air, the startup was a single frame. So if you did it instant air, it was the fastest reversal in the game. It was... and Killer Frost had the best slide and the best parry in the game.
Oh, man. I was a big Killer Frost main. Oh, man.
Yeah, like, Killer Frost, and like, she didn't need meter for her combos, and she was still pulling, like, 40-45%. So, like, that game was allowed to be ridiculous, and I kind of liked that. And then, much like you guys, my silver medal is Mortal Kombat X. I mean, for the same reasons that you guys. Like, the roster's great, the guests were incredible. Alien and Predator, hello, give me yes, please. And that game made me like Leatherface, because as much as I would have liked to have had it where Leatherface was an MK9 and then Freddy was an MKX, so it'd be Freddy versus Jason and Alien versus Predator. Holy shit, did they ever take the concept of a chainsaw-wielding maniac and make it just stupid fun. Stance cancels, and the one variation that they had where they made him like a hard keep-away character just by throwing chainsaws. So funny. I'll always love Mortal Kombat X for just kind of messing around. Plus, it introduced like Kodokan, Takeda, and Ferritor, who I think were some of the best newcomers of the entire franchise. Bold statement, I know. And then my number one gold winner is actually going to be Injustice 2 for a myriad of reasons. One, besides the stat system, I think Injustice 2 has the best customization system of any fighting game. Because outside of just making your own characters, which was originally going to be a thing in Injustice 2, they let you customize the entire roster however you want. And with literally thousands of options per character for gear, I mean, it's no wonder I literally have 650 hours logged into that game.
I don't even want to know the amount of hours I've spent in Injustice 2.
The sad thing is...
I'm on PlayStation, so I can't, like, see that.
No, you can, actually. There's actually an...
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's an options menu where you can go see your statistics, and you can also see your most played character and whatnot, and you can see how many hours you played of Injustice 2 in that system.
Oh, that's funky. I didn't know that.
And let's not forget that I think overall, outside of the fact that they had two Mortal Kombat characters, which is like, I would have preferred just one, but I'll take it, Injustice 2 had the best DLC run of any NetherRealm game to date, because of both size and because they were willing to go out there. Hellboy, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Red Hood, and Starfire are in the same damn game. And they were all DLC, and I loved it. Oh, and Adam, Ryan Choi, that game was my introduction to Ryan Choi,
I love that.
I love him!
Great.
He is such a good boy, and I love him. But yeah, and like I said, but the biggest thing for me with Injustice 2 is how close it was to my perfect fighting game. Like there are two things that they could have done in order to make Injustice 2 perfect. One, it's have had another 3 rounds of fighter packs, right? And have it all be, outside of guest characters, all of the canceled characters. Now imagine, for instance, because I kind of remember most, if not all of them, imagine Fire Packs 4, 5, and 6, however you spread them out, having Bluebird, Detective Chimp, Crypto, Cersei, Constantine.
Crypto the Super Dog was in there. That one I remember the most. I love that idea.
If Etrigan isn't in Injustice 3, I'm going to have some words with NetherRealm.
There's the other two, Etrigan and there's a
Penguin was one of them, I think.
Yeah, I could have honestly done without Penguin, but I think it would have been really cool to see what they would have done with that guy in a fighting game.
Yeah.
Like as far as Batman rogues go, I think he had the shout to be the most unique. And then 2 other cut characters were Killer Croc and Static Shock. So there's your DLC roster idea for Injustice 2. If you do like 4, 5, and 6, your Bluebirds and all of them, just get those canceled characters, bring them back, clean, perfect roster in my opinion, or as close to perfect as you can get, really. And the second thing I think they should have done is they should have found a way to have just disabled stats and nothing else, because looking back at Injustice 2 with its custom move, like its sort of custom variation idea with where you have 2 slots to mess around with moves and whatnot, imagine if they had allowed you to just have normal stats, but customize your gear and your moves. Shit, that would have been the best fighting game of all time.
That would have been so cool.
Especially considering that you have things like you have Joker's classic super move activation where it's a full screen pie projectile. Or you have Batman being able to electrify all of his Batarangs so that the explosions can combo. Or Black Canary having a grenade, or being able to pop up people with her body lock normal. That, all in all, I think would have been incredible to see, but even without those 2 things, Injustice 2 is still my favorite fighting game of all time, in my personal opinion. And it's kind of telling that, like, Injustice takes up 2 of the 3 slots, and I'm really excited for Injustice 3, as long as it doesn't suck. But, I mean, that's the hope, isn't it? So, that's about everything that I wanted to, that was on our list for today. Yeah, that's everything we did. We did roster size, we did guest characters, we talked about how best to balance things, modes, pet peeves, tutorials, roster creation exercises, pitching a fighter, and our favorite games. So, that's all she wrote. We're done!
Oh wait, one quick addendum before we finish. I just had this big brainwave. I'm gonna change my lost roster entry from the wild card to Jesse Faden.
I
think she could.
Fucking bastard! I say that with love, by the way, because I
get it.
I freaking love Jesse Faden. If you guys have not played Control, this is me being a big shill. Go play Control. The ultimate
play Control.
The Ultimate Edition was the last month's, or was it last month's? I think it was last month's free PlayStation Plus game. But it's like if you pick up the Ultimate Edition, or if you just want to play the base edition, because the base edition's got plenty enough going on. That's weird and crazy. Jesse motherfucking Faden. Yes. Yes. So
I haven't played it, but I should check it out.
Absolutely. Just make sure you just remember that it's a very intensive game. So even the last gen consoles, the PS4 and the Xbox One, kind of have trouble running it sometimes, but that's just because Remedy did not mess around with that game. So that kind of does it. I want to thank Maddie for swinging on by, being a first-time guest on the channel, and Mono for coming by again for this.
Always an honor.
I'm always happy to have you. And if you guys have anybody who you want to have join the thing, I'm considering making this a monthly deal. So once a month we come in here, I don't know, we can maybe even expand it to be not just fighting games, but fighting games was the one that brought us all together. But we could just expand it to things like, I don't know, first-person shooters or crazy character ideas. And
Get me in on that.
yeah.
That'd be really fun.
Yeah, so instead of just being a fighting game podcast, we could just turn this into a podcast thing in general for the channel. So don't forget to be awesome, everybody who tuned in. I'll see all of you guys on the other side. And thanks for coming by, folks.